Hi everyone and welcome to the live stream. We're just making sure everything has been set up correctly on our end here. This is our first official live stream on the Wondershare YouTube channel. So very exciting and pleased to be here with you all today. And just going to make sure that everything is working properly, which it seems to be. So this is our first official live stream on this channel. So we're very excited to share with you a lot of tips and tricks and a few kind of behind the scenes bit of information about cameras, technology, obviously corrupted video files, how they can impact your daily life, and a bit on data recovery as well as a bit of an introduction on myself and my role within this space. So welcome to the live stream. Make sure you let me know in the comment section how this is all looking. As I mentioned, it's our first attempt at a bit of a live stream situation. So let us know how it's all looking. I do have my comments feed on the screen here. So I'll be able to see when you guys are chiming in. So don't mind me, but I'm occasionally looking off to the side to see the screen. But so far looks like everything is working well. Hopefully the audio is coming through nice and cleanly as well. Just going to give it a minute or two for some extra people to join us and before we kick off things officially. Hello, Zora Brown. I can see your comment there. Hannah, hi, how are you? There we go. So if there's anything that goes wrong during the live feed, make sure you drop a comment in the feed there so we can see and get things fixed as soon as possible. But may as well kick things off and people can join and chime in as the live broadcast goes on. So a bit of an introduction. My name is Daniel Sands. I create some of the videos here on the Wondershare YouTube channel. Been doing so for a couple of years. And beyond that, I've got quite a bit of experience in this whole YouTube space. Been making videos on a couple of my own channels for probably close to 3 years now and loving every minute of it. But obviously it's quite a time-consuming process. So I started back in, I think it was 2019, just making some videos with my trusty phone in the garage, started uploading those, and I guess got a bit of traction based from there, and people started watching the videos and commenting, and that kind of leads you down the track of experimenting and learning and trying to improve your craft. Along the way, learned a lot about a lot of things, everything from cameras to drones, data recovery, data storage with our hard drives and whatnot, which we'll get to shortly. We'll touch on some camera bits and pieces as well, and just my experience using all those things throughout the years. We'll also be touching on just a few tips and tricks that you guys can employ to select the perfect camera for you, what other bits of gear might come in handy for your YouTube lifestyles or just creating videos outside of YouTube as well. And so hopefully you guys are interested in hearing about a few of those topics. All righty, to make sure everything is still working here well. Okay, so also guys, while you're watching this live broadcast, it's important to note that Wondershare is going to be giving away 5 free licenses to Wondershare Recoverit. There'll be 1 month licenses and they'll be picked from the random commenters of this live stream. So very exciting. Make sure you leave a comment because that's where the winners will be selected from. This live comment feed on the screen right now. So all you have to do is drop a comment down there and also follow Wondershare Repairit and Wondershare Recoverit across all the different social media platforms. You'll find a bunch of links in the description of this live stream. So head on over to all those different pages, give them all a follow, and that's where you'll find out if you're one of the lucky 5 winners of the free subscriptions to Wondershare Recoverit. So very exciting, and make sure you're leaving your comments to be in the draw to win one of those. Alrighty, so I think we should probably kick things off now. We've got 7 or 8 of us joined and 1 like there as well, which is fantastic. As I said, make sure you're commenting and liking as we go along. So the first thing I thought we'd touch on is choosing the right camera for your needs when it comes to not only YouTube, but moving into your professional lives as well. Maybe you're producing videos. So for me personally, I do obviously a lot of video work on YouTube, but moving beyond that as well, I do some video work for clients outside of YouTube, which is always very exciting and a bit more nerve-wracking because those expectations are usually quite a bit higher than people's expectations when they just watch a casual video on YouTube. Hello, Tracy. Nice to see you. Welcome to the live stream. And thank you for commenting down there as well. So when my first journey started kind of creating videos in the very early days of my YouTube career, literally the first thing I used was just the camera on my phone. And you'd be surprised the quality of the footage you can actually get out of your phone camera. A lot of people, they tend to discount the humble phone camera, but especially nowadays, technology has come so far when it comes to the cameras they build into your phones. So my first YouTube camera was a iPhone XR, bright red, and that thing did me really well for close to a year. I think I was using that. Where they do fall a little bit short is with their audio quality though. So I find the footage, like the quality of the video coming out of the phones. Any phones, by the way, like I'm currently using an Android phone, a Motorola Razr. On the new flip phones, camera is really quite impressive on this thing, quite a bit better than I was expecting. But almost all of the iPhones nowadays have really impressive cameras on them as well. And they'll get you quite far when it comes to YouTube and also to some degree creating professional content. So even to this day and age, if I'm filming a video on one of the more proper cameras like this, but then I want to just show a close-up, say I'm talking about this desk, for example, and you might see me sitting in front of the desk and talking about it, but then I want to show a close-up of the keyboard, for example. These cameras don't work that well for handhold shooting. So something like holding like this while you're panning along, say a keyboard, or say something up high that you can't get a tripod up there for, that's where these can fall apart a little bit. We'll touch on a few different models in a few minutes' time that are a bit better for that, but this one in particular, which again we'll discuss when it comes time, is not the best for handheld things. And that, even to this day and age, is where phones really come into their own. They've got great stabilization built in. The quality of the footage is pretty exceptional too that comes out of these things. So you can just bring it in nice and close, whatever you want to film, and away you go. So very impressive. Don't discount your humble phone, because you'll be surprised at the quality of footage that can come out of it. And it saves your budget as well. A lot of people seem to have the mentality that if you're going to get into this whole video game, you have to spend thousands on a really good camera and microphone system. It's not necessarily the case. I would definitely recommend just giving it a go with the equipment you already own, because the chances are it will get you further than you imagine. Now, moving beyond the iPhone, once I'd kind of reached my my limit in how effective that was going to be for my YouTube career, I did just move into a GoPro. Very simple little action cam. I think it was a GoPro Hero 8 that I bought with points. One of my different points memberships allowed me to buy that, which was really cool. And that thing was quite impressive too. It has even better stabilization than your phone camera, and that will perform really well in a whole range of situations. So it's just a matter of kind of incrementally stepping up, and beyond there, you get into the proper cameras. So that's when I moved on to this, which is my Sony a6400. This is probably my favorite possession at the moment. And you might be wondering what I'm filming on, considering I'm showing you this camera. I've actually got two of these exactly the same with the same lens as well. So the footage you're watching right now is coming from a camera identical to this. And this is what's called a mirrorless camera. So it's got interchangeable lenses. You can take the lens off the front and swap in one that suits your needs. And they're quite a bit more impressive than your humble action cameras. But along with that comes a lot of different settings as well. So with a camera like this, you really have to put a lot of effort into learning how to use it properly, how to adjust all your apertures, your shutter speed, your ISO, your frame rates. There's a lot of work to put in to get the proper footage you want out of a camera like this. So it kind of depends. Like when you get to a certain point, you might start getting the urge to experiment with those different settings. One thing they really do help a lot for. Hello to the 40th step. Nice to see you. Welcome to the live stream. One thing that all those settings really do help for is getting a lot better low light performance. So that's where you'll find your phone and the smaller compact cameras like your GoPros, they really struggle in low light performance. That was probably my main frustration that led me towards buying I say full-size camera. It's almost there because these things perform so much better in low light. Now, it doesn't just come down to the type of camera you buy. Hello, Rainy J. Nice to see you. Don't mind me if I'm occasionally looking over at the screen, but I've got my comments feed just here on my right-hand screen, and I can see looking down the barrel of the camera most of the time. So these things perform, as I was saying, so much better in low light, but a lot of that does come down to the lens you have on the front. So on the front of my Sony a6400 here, I have the Sigma 16mm lens. So this is what's called a prime lens, which means there's no zoom capabilities. What you see is what you get. So if I want to zoom this camera angle in close to myself, I literally have to come closer to the camera. There's no zoom on that lens. Now, what that means is you get a much, it's called a faster lens, which is a much lower aperture. So those Sigma 16mm lenses, they go all the way to f1.4. Now, if you're not familiar with what aperture means, it's basically how wide the lens is and how much light it's letting into the camera. And that's what makes for your really blurry backgrounds. Like if it focuses my hand, you can see how blurry the computer screen is in the back there. That's the aperture, essentially. So if I dial this in while we're filming, and I go to aperture 10, for example, now you'll find it's quite a bit darker in the room. The camera is going to adjust some settings to try and make it brighter again. but it's just, everything's more in focus. There's a lot less depth of field. So with my hands there, you can still kind of see the computer screen compared to if I was to adjust the aperture back down to around f2, which is about there, and you can see how blurry that computer screen is. So that's aperture in a nutshell. It's probably a lot more complicated than that, but that is just gives you kind of a general idea on what that is. And that lens is exceptional for that depth of field, that really nice low aperture. So if it was nighttime, I'd adjust it down to probably f1.4, and you could film and you can see the stars. You can see a lot more light at nighttime. So definitely worth getting a good camera that can connect to quite a good lens like that. Moving beyond that lens, when you want to, I guess, get a bit more range in your depth. So this one is obviously a 16mm lens. That's your kind of your focal length. So that's how far away I look right now. So right now I'm about 1 meter away from that camera. And this is the view you get on a 16mm lens. But if I want to zoom in, I need to dial that zoom from 16mm into, say, 50, for example, or that's called telephoto, kind of the more you zoom in. So as I mentioned, this lens is prime, so it has no zoom capabilities. However, this lens here does have zoom capabilities. So this one is called an 18-105. This is a Sony branded lens. And this is probably my favorite lens when it comes to filmmaking, because having that 18-105 focal length is really versatile. 18 is quite wide. So if you have it on 18, you can pretty much hold the camera out in front of you and it's going to get a lot of you in the picture. But then if you want to zoom in, if some birds are flying past, if you're outdoors, or you just want to zoom in on something quite far away, this one has zoom that really punches into 105, which is, it's quite a significant amount of zoom. So these two lenses together, I find, are quite a good package for content creators. This one in particular is good for video. This is, as I said, the Sony 18-105 OSS f4 lens. That's kind of the full name of it. And why it's good for video makers is it has what's called a constant aperture. Now, what you'll find most of the time with zoom lenses like these is as you zoom in, say you set it to f4, for example, when you zoom in, that's going to change itself during the zoom process to f5 or even f6. And when you're filming video, that's not what you want, because when that happens, the lighting's going to be changing. And so if you ever watch those videos where people are zooming in on something and you see it gets dark and then light again and dark and light as they're zooming in, that's a result of not using a lens that has a constant fixed aperture. So this being f4, it does go higher than that, but if you set it on f4 and then you zoom, it's going to remain at f4 the whole way through that range. The lighting's going to stay exactly the same and everything's going to look just perfect. So very good lens for that aspect, but also this one has built-in stabilization. Now that is huge, especially when it comes to handheld videography. So with the old Sigma up here, this is this body, as I said, the Sony a6400 has no built-in stabilization. So if you're moving like this, your footage is going to look just as jittery. And then the lens has no stabilization either. So this package is completely unstabilized. Now what you can do is put that on something like this. Should have had my props ready a bit earlier on. Now this is what's called a gimbal. And essentially you put your camera into this rig and it's going to keep it nice and level as you move around and film. The whole idea of this is, to keep that footage as stable as possible. Problem is that can weigh quite a lot when you're filming for long periods of time. For a couple of minutes here and there, it's no problem, but by the time you put a camera on there and a lens, maybe a microphone as well, that can be quite intensive to manipulate and move around and just manage for long periods of time. So that's where you need either, sorry, that was probably really loud. That's where you need either a camera or a lens that has built-in stabilization. Neither of these do, but this lens here, the Sony 18-105 OSS lens, this does have built-in stabilization. It's called OSS, which stands for optical steady shot. And honestly, that makes a really, really big difference. Now, it's not going to completely iron out every single bump, but it will mean that if you are shooting handheld and you're moving the camera around like this, for example, the footage will look pretty smooth. So definitely recommend looking into a camera that has OSS, optical steady shot, or alternatively, looking into a camera body that has stabilization built in. So as I mentioned, this is the Sony a6400, which does not have any form of stabilization built in whatsoever. It's probably my biggest problem with this camera and my biggest frustration and my biggest draw to get something new. And what's quite exciting in that space is Sony just a couple of days ago released a brand new camera, which is essentially an updated version of this. It's the a6700. And if you're looking for a good value camera that's going to perform better than most of the modern cameras on the market, go for that brand new Sony a6700. I've got my eye on it. I reckon I'll have to buy it in the next couple of weeks. But it looks to be a very, very impressive camera. It's got quite a few benefits over this one. So you can shoot 4K slow motion, which is 120 frames per second. And that when you break your 120 frames back down to regular viewing speed, you get some footage is essentially slow motion because it's 1/5 of the regular speed. Some amazing colors, new color science built into that new camera as well, which I'm also very excited about. And it has stabilization, which is just the biggest benefit, which means you can essentially put any lens on. I can put this Sigma 16mm lens on. I can put any lens I want, and it's going to be nice and stable. So that'll be my tip for picking a YouTube camera. Go for one of the Sony Alpha series. They have unbelievable focus as well, and that's why when I put my hand up, it's going to snap on my hand nice and quickly. For my face, it's going to focus back on my face. Industry-leading stabilization, and the new one is just gets better on that same topic. So that'll be my recommendation, and get yourself a nice wide lens. Most cameras do come with a lens, but normally that's not that impressive. You generally want to try and buy just the body only and then buy your own lens separately. So Sigma 16mm, that's what I've got there. Sony a18-105, those are some great beginner lenses that will definitely get you off to the right start. Now, when it comes to cameras like these as well, it's worth keeping in mind there's a difference between APS-C, or what's known as a crop sensor, which is what these cameras are, and a full frame camera. So full frame cameras are a little bit bigger, and what that's basically referring to by full frame or APS-C is essentially the size of the sensor inside that camera. So that's the sensor just there in the middle. This is an APS-C sensor, so that actually is quite a small sensor, whereas full frame, that square would be much bigger, and you can install some much larger lenses, and there's quite a few benefits. Going to give you a wider field of view, a more intense bokeh effect, which is that depth of field, that nice blurry background, and some more premium lenses. However, I wouldn't recommend going full frame. It is tempting, I know, but they are very, very expensive. And not only the cameras themselves, the lenses to suit full frame cameras are probably 2 to 3 times the price. So if you're just getting into video making and filmmaking, get yourself an APS-C camera like this. Any of the Sony Alpha series, the new Sony FX30, that's also a great candidate as well. They're not cheap, but they're much cheaper than full frame cameras. So just something to keep in mind there. But probably the more important thing than video quality is the audio quality, because they say online, people can forgive a poor quality visual, but they can't forgive poor quality audio. So it's definitely worth investing in some good quality microphones. They don't have to necessarily be expensive, but just something that's going to sound good and is compatible with whatever you're shooting with. So back when I was filming with my trusty iPhone, I bought what's called a Rode SmartLav lavalier microphone. And that was it's just like a little microphone you tape underneath your shirt, and you'd run that back and plug it back into your iPhone. Very cheap. I think that microphone cost me in Australia about $80. US, that's probably $50 to $60. I think you can still buy them, and you will need to also buy quite a long extension cable as well to run it back to wherever your camera is. But that thing sounded fantastic, and that's what most of my videos were recorded with in my first year of YouTube, before I got sick of that cable. I was like, I need to go for something wireless, and that's where the Rode Wireless Go came into things, which I'll show you in 2 seconds. So this here is the Rode Wireless Go microphone system. I love this thing. It's very, very impressive, good sound quality, and it's very easy to use. This is the Rode Wireless Go 2, and it's what I use for most of my videos. Actually, all my videos are recorded on the Wondershare Repairit YouTube channel and my own personal YouTube channel. They're filmed using this simple wireless microphone system. So you can get the Rode Wireless Go 1 and the Rode Wireless Go 2. I've got the Rode Wireless Go 2 system, which just basically gives me 2 microphones and 1 receiver. And how these essentially work is you connect the receiver into your camera using a cable like this, nice and small, and then you just clip this microphone onto your shirt somewhere, and it wirelessly transmits that signal back to the camera. Very impressive sound quality that comes from these microphones. I've been thoroughly impressed, so much so that it's been my go-to microphone for a couple of years now. There is some alternatives in the market. I know DJI makes a pretty impressive microphone as well. So a few options to look into just based on budget, but these are pretty good bang for buck, and they definitely work quite well and are compatible with almost any camera or phone. Even you can plug this into your phone as well. You will just need a adapter that allows you to plug a 3.5mm jack into whatever device you're using. If it's an iPhone, that's through one of your Lightning to TRS adapters or just your standard headphone jack. And then you will need to also pick up a cable from Rode to make that compatible as well. But well worth it. Definitely recommend that. As I said, the microphone I've been using for a couple of years, and it's made quite a significant difference to my videos. Now, if you're not wanting to have a microphone that you actually wear, then you can purchase a microphone that goes on top of your camera. This one here, this nice big fluffy microphone is the this is the Rode what's it called again? This is the Rode Video Mic Pro Plus. That's what I always forget, the plus on the end. So essentially, if I just remove this fluffy piece from the front, that's all the microphone is underneath. It's called a shotgun microphone, so it's going to record things that come directly from the front. Very good quality microphone. I've been thoroughly enjoying it. I'm just finding it hard to switch away from my wireless microphones to something like this full time, but very useful. I did purchase this windsock piece extra because a lot of my filming is done outside, so I really need something that can block out some of that wind noise. So we've got a few people watching now. Feel free to comment down on the right-hand side there. If you guys leave a comment, we will be selecting 5 lucky people from that comment section to give out a free subscription to One Share Recoverit. Make sure you also follow our social media pages. They're all linked in the description down below, because that's where we'll be notifying the winners of our giveaway. Anyway, so that pretty much covers microphones. There's a lot on the market. So what I'd recommend you do if you're looking to get one is just jump on YouTube videos. Chances are whatever microphone you're looking at will have been tested by somebody and probably compared to some other ones you might be looking at. Watch some videos, get a feel for how they sound, make sure they're compatible with your camera, and probably make your decision based on that. So beyond that, that pretty much touches on all my main camera gear. So as I mentioned, I do still use a GoPro for a lot of my more action-y things. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of my content on my own personal YouTube channel is kind of full drive and adventure related. So quite often I'm out full driving or adventuring or running down the beach, and therefore I do need that camera that I can just grab. It doesn't take up much space, and I can just point and shoot and it's going to work well, or I can stick it to my vehicle. That's where that camera comes in handy. As I mentioned, I use my phone for quite a lot of the close-up footage, and then these Sony cameras are just pretty unbeatable for anything where I'm actually talking to the camera, kind of like I'm doing right about now. So you guys are getting a bit of a taste for the video quality coming from the camera right now. You can see it's quite sharp. I've got a bit of a preview here, so I'm jumping back and forth between. Hi, Shandana. How you going? Welcome to the live stream. Pleasure to have you here with us. And the audio you're hearing actually right now isn't from any of those microphones I just run through. It's from the, I won't touch it because it's a bit temperamental, but it's a Blue Yeti Nano microphone. Just a USB microphone that plugs into your computer, which I've got set up behind me right now. And that is a really exceptional sounding microphone, as hopefully you're experiencing right now. Really nice high quality audio, but not easy to make a system like this work with a camera like that. So right now my computer is kind of acting as the central hub for everything that's going on right now. So YouTube, the camera, the microphone, everything is run through the computer right now. Whereas if I was out in the garage or out adventuring somewhere, I wouldn't be able to plug a microphone like this into a camera like this, traditionally speaking. Good. That's good to know, Tracy. Yeah, it's hard for me to kind of monitor everything at once. So that's good to know that it's sounding good from your end. Appreciate that feedback. Yes. Anyway, so let's move on to, I guess, some other slightly more exciting bits and pieces. So a lot of the footage I capture when you're outdoors, you really need some aerial shots or just some bits of footage that essentially immerse the viewer in the video. So if I'm driving across a sand dune, I really need to be able to show that from the air to give a bit of perspective as to what this area is like and what my car looks like when it's driving through those areas. So if you view my Explore Bound YouTube channel, you will see a few bits and pieces of this footage spliced in. But that, of course, is done with a drone, and there is a lot of drones on the market, and picking one that's right for you can be a bit of a tough challenge. So the very first, hello, got a few more comments here. Nick, how you going? Hi, welcome. And Eldora Aria, hi, welcome. From Nigeria. Fantastic. I'm glad to know that the microphone is also sounding good for you as well. That's fantastic feedback. So appreciate you guys leaving a comment down there. So the drone I very first started with was a DJI Mavic Pro, one of the very first ones. There's been a few Mavics along the line. The very first Mavic, that was quite a fantastic drone. So we bought it secondhand probably 3 or 4 years ago now. Didn't pay too much for it, and it did just really well for a couple of years. definitely got that footage you wanted. And the Mavic Pros have quite a lot of technology built into them. So they'll do quite a lot of autonomous flying, which is, if you're out filming by yourself, you really need something that can do a bit of the tracking and articulating and monitoring of your vehicle by itself. For me, that was something that was quite important. So the Mavic Pro was pretty much the lowest drone secondhand that had that functionality built in. So I picked that up and used it for a couple of years, got some amazing shots with that. Put an ND filter on the front, which is a neutral density filter. Essentially, it's like a pair of sunglasses for your camera. And that's especially handy if you're filming out in bright, sunny areas. So I got those from Amazon. They're called Polar Pro ND filters. There's a few different versions you can get. And I popped one of those on when I pretty much first bought the drone. Used that for a few years and got some really, really nice footage. Sadly, last year it eventually died on us. So the problem with lithium batteries in drones like that, because they're quite high discharge, they can wear out after a while. And I wasn't keeping on top of how recently I upgraded the batteries, and we're doing a big camping trip. And I had it probably 60 meters up in the air. I'm driving along. I'm looking at my partner's filming. And I was like, she's like, the drone's disconnected from the controller, which sometimes it does. You'll slow down and they'll resynchronize and you can keep going. And this time it just was not resynchronizing. And I pulled the car over and I hopped out and I looked up in the air and I saw this drone just like plummeting down to earth. And I was like, and I saw it smash into a shrub, and like a blade went this way and a blade went that way. And I was like, that's no good. So we went and got it out from the shrubs. Couldn't test it out for the rest of that trip because obviously the blades were broken. When I got home, I did put a new set of blades on it, and much to my surprise, it did actually fire up and fly again, which is definitely a testament to DJI's build quality. For it to survive a drop like that and then still fly afterwards was really impressive. We were both shocked, but it never quite flew the same. And about 3 months later, I was just testing that. I was trying to do some professional videography for a friend's horse property down south. A really nice, stunning property with horses everywhere. And so we had the drone up in the air and I was flying. I was like, I knew I had a bit of an issue after flying for a long time. So I thought, you know what, I'll fly it straight up to its maximum height and get the really high shots I need first. Sent it up to 200 meters, which is the maximum we could legally fly in this area. And then I'm looking at it on the screen and it disconnects. I was like, oh no. And then it was just completely gone. And so we're just wandering through the bush to roughly the last location we saw that it was. Because luckily on the DJI software, it does keep a GPS of your flight location. So I was able to backtrack our steps through the bush, and it kind of had its last known location saved on the GPS. We walked through the bush and eventually found it, and it was still in one piece, but it definitely had seen better days. And since then, unfortunately, it's never flown since. So that was the end of that first drone. So we've got a comment here. The Real Talk asked one question about live streaming. Are you using Capture Card or Sony imaging app software with OBS? I'm using the Camlink 4K. That is the video capture card, and the camera is then connected in through that. You might be able to see it. That's with the white light behind the computer there. That is the Camlink 4K hooked in through the computer, and that's how this live stream is working. So I hope that helps you out. This is my first experiment using that as well. So I'm glad to know that it seems to be all working fine for everybody. All right. So what came next after that poor drone died? So yeah, I did this for a couple of years, which was really impressive. But when it was time to upgrade, just due to the positive experience we had with that original DJI drone for a couple of years, decided to go down the DJI path again and bought the DJI Mavic 3 Classic. So there's quite a few of the different Mavic 3 ranges. They make the Mavic 3 Cine, which is the top of the line. That one has a lot of fancy specs, including a built-in SSD. Quite pricey, but definitely the top of the range. Then the standard Mavic 3 Pro, I think it was a Mavic 3. Then the Mavic 3 Classic is just the budget entry version. I say budget, it's still quite a pricey drone. But honestly, it did everything we needed to do and more. It just doesn't have the telephoto lens, which is that zoom lens. It just has the Classic. But for everything that I do, that Classic lens is perfectly suitable. Gives you a really, really nice picture. It's amazing, like the quality difference between the old original DJI Mavic and the Mavic 3. And I was already impressed with the original Mavic, but the Mavic 3 is just so much better. And where I personally really notice that is when I'm putting together my videos, and I'll always color grade my footage. So I'll bring it in and then I'll play around with the colors. And And I had to spend quite a long time doing that on the first drone. With the Mavic 3, it's just ready to go pretty much straight out of the card. So that is definitely something that's worth keeping in mind if you don't want to spend too much time mucking around with your footage. Definitely recommend getting a bit of a higher level drone. But one thing on drones that I find a lot of people don't really talk about is if you do spend quite a lot of money on a very expensive drone, so you save up for a while and you're like, oh, yes, I bought this really expensive drone. Are you going to be happy to fly that in some precarious locations? Just something to keep in mind, because I found like with my cheaper drone, I was like, yeah, I can try and fly it through that little rock window or hang it over the edge of a cliff. But when it's worth a bit more money, you're a bit more hesitant. Like, oh, I might just play it a bit safe. And in my mind, that kind of defeats the purpose of having a drone if you're not willing to fly it in some of those more risky situations. So try and find something that's within budget that you won't be too devastated if it dies. Obviously, it's not going to be fun to lose a drone, but it's more fun losing a $1,000 drone than a $3,000 drone. Anyway, that's all I'll say about drones. So beyond all the camera equipment, something else that really significantly makes a difference when it comes to editing is the computer or your editing device you're using. Because this day and age, when every camera records 4K, you really need a fair bit of power when it comes to editing video. So when I first started, I would literally edit my footage on my iPhone. So I'd go out for the day, I'd film all the footage on the iPhone, my microphone would be plugged in, so all the audio is ready to go. And then I'd sit down on the couch and I would just slowly edit my video on the actual phone. Did surprisingly well, but it just limits you when it comes to being a little bit more creative, doing those more creative transitions or effects or laddering your videos, color grading, playing around with the audio. You can do quite a lot, but just when you want to go to the next level, you probably are going to want to upgrade to something like a full-size computer. Now, you don't have to go the whole hog. Like, this thing is probably a bit over the top for my needs, if not most people's needs. But for me, I was editing on a laptop computer for a couple of years. It was a gaming laptop, so I had a few high-end specs, but just when you're editing 4K footage, it can get quite intensive after a while, and especially with heat buildup. So that's the biggest problem you'll have with laptop computers, is they just don't have very good heat management solutions. And that's not surprising when they're basically cramming a similar amount of specifications as a computer like this into a very thin case that also has a keyboard, also has a mouse, all that stuff, speakers all built into a very small frame by design, because they're designed to be portable, right? But when you start expecting these poor computers to start editing complicated 4K footage, you do start pushing them to their absolute maximum. So it makes sense if you're planning on doing some intensive 4K video editing to go for something like a desktop computer. This thing I've only had for probably about 4 months now, and it's made a big difference to my editing. So I tried to buy something that I knew was going to last me for quite a long time to come. Now, I edit using Premiere Pro, which is known as being one of the more CPU-intensive bits of editing software. I always film in 4K. That's from the Sony cameras, that's from the drone, that's from my phone, that's from the GoPro. All of that's 4K, and all of that can be quite intensive to edit. So the specs on this is a RTX 4080 graphics card, which is probably overkill for what I need, but I do want this computer to last me for quite a few years to come. So that's what I went for, to edit some nice 4K footage. The CPU is an i9, the current generation of i9 Intel processor. It's got 64 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM, which is the new fast style of RAM. And as you probably see, a whole lot of cooling. And that, honestly, is the number one thing for editing computers, is make sure you have really good cooling. So this has a series of fans at the top there, a series of fans at the front there, a liquid cooler inside there as well, all in the effort to try and keep those temperatures as low as is physically possible. Yeah, so that's the computer. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section down there so I can give you guys any information that you want. But I reckon we shall move on to probably color science, I'd say. And that's the part of technological advancements that I found is really interesting. So color science basically means whatever your camera is capturing and however you're then editing the colors on your computer, how that looks when the end video product is finally made and it's ready to share with the world. So with cameras, for example, this day and age, you've got quite a few different picture profiles to choose from. Right now, because I haven't got the ability to color grade this footage before you're seeing it, you're seeing the colors that the Sony camera is naturally putting out. That's picture profile is essentially turned off. However, if you're going to be doing a lot of color editing and really manipulating that footage, you essentially want to be shooting in a different picture profile. So that's when your things like S-Log2, S-Log3, S-Cinetone, that's Sony's new picture profile, which looks really impressive. And essentially, if you were to look at the footage that came out of a camera filmed in S-Log, for example, it's going to look incredibly flat. Like you won't be able to see much color at all. But what it's also doing is the areas that are quite dark of the footage, like over my shoulder just here, there's going to be a lot more detail in those areas. And the blue of my shirt, for example, won't be so blue. My skin won't be so vibrant. And what that means is you have a lot more room when it comes to editing. And that's where I find technology has really advanced quite a bit in both cameras and editing software through computers. So the latest Sony camera that I was mentioning earlier, the Sony a6700, which I'm looking at purchasing in the next few weeks, maybe, that has Sony's brand new S-Cinetone color profile built in. And that's essentially going to give you so much more room when it comes to editing. It's built to focus on skin tones. So the camera will find your face in the frame. It'll analyze that and make sure that the colors in your face are perfectly accurate, while also capturing a whole lot of data from everywhere else. So you can then color grade and turn the footage the way you want. Someone described color grading once as, because you might think like, oh, if I just film in this picture profile, I can then edit it to make it look like the others. And while that's slightly true, it's almost like trying to take a loaf of bread and turn it into a scone. Whereas when you turn the picture profile to something like S-Log, you're starting with the raw ingredients, the bread, much easier to turn, flour and the raw ingredients into a loaf of bread or turn that into a scone. So that analogy just helped for me. I'm not sure if it makes much sense to you guys, but something that might be of interest and a way of kind of explaining what those picture profiles are. And then when you bring those picture profiles into a software like Premiere Pro or a Blackmagic's DaVinci Resolve, which is much better for color editing, it just gives you a lot more room to play with, essentially. So moving on to the next topic on how technology has improved my process video editing. That is really when it comes down to things like automatic tracking, like we were mentioning, that's built into the drones we were talking about earlier. So literally the new Mavic 3, I can send it up, I can lock it onto my vehicle, I can just press go. And as I'm driving along, this drone will be flying next to me, keeping itself locked onto the car the whole time. And it just takes the effort out from me while I'm trying to do a million other things. Maybe I'm talking to a camera in the car, trying to drive the car, trying to navigate where I'm going. It's just one less thing to worry about, because I know that drone is going to be circling, keeping me in the perfect frame and making everything look fantastic. So that technology, really, we're at such a fantastic time at the moment, because there's the amount of stuff they're putting into cameras nowadays really does make our job a lot easier. Even newer generations of these cameras, you can set it to track mode. And similar to the drone, essentially I would just sit back a little bit, I would track it on me, and then it's going to zoom in so that I'm in the center of the frame. And as I walk around, obviously this one isn't doing it, but as I would walk around, the camera would keep me in the center of the frame. So it's a good time to be getting into editing videos, and the technology has certainly come a long way in making that a lot easier for us. Oh, and stabilization as well, just while we're in here. So as I mentioned earlier, these cameras not having any stabilization built in, that can be quite a problem, because if I'm wanting to walk along and film, for example, I can't use this camera and this lens because the footage is just going to be unusable. Now, the lens I mentioned earlier, the 18-105 that does have stabilization built in, makes a massive difference, but it's still something you have to be quite conscious of, and you probably couldn't move it much more than just little bits like that. But if I was jogging with a camera that doesn't have stabilization in the body, the footage is going to be virtually unusable at the other end. And that's where technology is coming a long way. The camera I mentioned earlier, the a6700, everything from the Sony FX30, most of the full frame cameras, which is like the A7S3, all those cameras have built-in stabilization, 5-axis stabilization, which is obviously all your different directions that you can experience movement. They're all stabilized, meaning you can use any lens, you can move quite vigorously, and that footage is going to look silky smooth. So it's just those areas that I find technology has come a long way, and it's definitely quite impressive. So just a quick reminder, at this point in the video, we are approximately 40 minutes through, but make sure to drop a comment in the feed if you want to go into the draw to win one of those free Wondershare Recoverit licenses. 5 giveaway based on anyone who comments in that section right there, and then follows Wondershare, Repairit, and Wondershare Recoverit on the different various social media platforms. If you want links to those, check in the description of this video. There's a bunch of links there, so you guys can go into the draw to win. Why not? Hey, you may as well leave a comment and make sure you follow those pages. So let's move on to part 3 of this live stream, which is going to be talking about data backup and the importance of it. Now, this is something that I definitely struggle with a little bit myself because I'm out capturing videos. Hang on, got a bit of a comment here. I don't know what camera exactly will be suitable for a beginner photographer. So if you're taking, it depends what photography you're into, but I would again recommend the Sony Alpha series. So these are the Sony A6400s. They're interchangeable with any Sony E-mount lens, or you can adapt them up to suit other ones, depending on what you're trying to photograph. This 16mm lens is fantastic for landscape photography and also fantastic for anything at nighttime as well. They're both compatible. You don't really need the stabilization when it comes to photography as well. So you can get by with pretty much this exact combination, and you'll be able to pick that up for a pretty competitive price. And you just pop it on a basic tripod and get some pretty amazing photographs. Star photography as well. That package is really good for star photography because you can dial all the way down to f1.4, let all that light in at nighttime, which is what you want for your astral photography. Set it to maybe a 20-second exposure, ISO around 800. F-number or aperture cranked right down to around f1.4 and get some pretty amazing shots. And then if you wanted to step it up from there, getting a lens like the 18-105 or even further, if you want to get some nice nature photography, for example, I'd definitely recommend that as being a pretty good package for a beginner photographer. But honestly, if you're just starting out, just get started with your phone to begin with. They've been taking some pretty impressive photos this day and age. And I would also recommend to start playing around with editing as well. You'd be surprised how impressive you can make photos look, even if they're taken just with your phone or your GoPro. Yeah, like Lightroom. I use a lot of Lightroom, and the amount of photos that once you've edited them, you would never know what camera they came from. So I'd work on upgrading to something like this eventually, but get started with your phone and see how you go. It's definitely a fun process. So data backup, that's something I definitely struggled with a fair bit when I was first starting out, because I'd go out on a weekly shoot and I'd come back with probably 100 gigabytes of 4K footage. Maybe I just filmed too long, I'm not sure, but trying to manage all that because I'm someone who does like to keep all my data. So I want to keep all 100 gigabytes of that video, and then next week I'll be capturing another 100 gigabytes. Week after that, another 100 gigabytes, and it does stack up pretty quickly. So when it comes to data backup, you have a few different options to choose from. Obviously, the most classic way is with an external hard drive, something like this. This is just a WD Elements USB 2.0 external hard drive. Nothing fancy, not very expensive, but I guess that's their perk. They're not very expensive, so you can afford to get a couple of these. I do have a couple of these. There's a second one exactly the same. So these are both 4 terabytes each, so 4,000 gigabytes. That gets me by for about 80 different video projects, which is good. But the downside to these, actually there's 2 downsides really. One is they're not fast enough to actually edit your video while your video files are stored on this. They're purely for long-term storage. So I kind of have to edit my footage somewhere else. And when I'm finished with that project, then I transfer it into this for long-term storage. But then the other side of that coin is if I then need to access that footage, I've got to transfer it back off either onto my computer or onto a faster drive to then edit that footage again. So they're nice and cheap, but that's one of the downsides. The other one is they are quite vulnerable. So inside a HDD is literally a spinning disk. That's why it's called a hard disk drive. And that's why when you plug them in, sometimes you can feel a little bit of vibration and hear a bit of noise. There's physically a spinning disk within these cases. And anything that moves like that can break. So if I was to drop this, which I won't demonstrate, chances are I'll be losing my footage on those things. However, as we'll mention shortly, there is some ways you can recover corrupted data files that you can experience from physically damaging disks like this. And we'll touch on that shortly. So what do you do if you don't want to store on a external hard drive, but you need somewhere to store your data, but you want somewhere that's going to be faster, more reliable, and you can actually edit using it? That's where the portable SSD comes into things. So this is a SanDisk 2 terabyte USB-C portable solid state drive. This is much more durable. Probably shouldn't do that. A lot of valuable projects on this hard drive, but they are much more durable. They're much smaller, as you can see, that compared to a hard drive, much smaller and also much thinner. However, much more expensive as well. But being SSD, these work a lot quicker. So I can actually have all my footage when I get back from a trip or a video shoot session. I'll come back, I'll plug this into my computer, I'll plug all my SD cards in and pull all the footage onto this. And then I can edit directly from this drive. And as I mentioned, that's 2 terabytes. That's plenty enough for me to store probably 15 to 20 separate video projects. Quite often I've got a couple on at the same time. And then when I'm finally finished with them, and I know that the chances are I'm not going to need that footage, that's when I'll transfer my archive files across to a hard drive for longer term storage. Yes, your view on Google as a backup option in general by Chandana S. That is a great point, and that is that brings me on to my third option for data backup, and that is using cloud-based solutions like Google, iCloud, Dropbox, all those different platforms to actually back up your data. That is going to be the safest way to store your data for sure, because you'll be able to pull that down from any computer at any time. If your computer burns down, if you lose your phone, if your camera breaks, your SD card snaps, you lose your SSDs, that data is still going to be safe and secure on the cloud. Now, the problems you might run into is data limits. So as I mentioned, it's not weird for me to come back with over 100 gigabytes of footage from one film session. And for me, that's not feasible for me to be storing that footage on a cloud-based solution like those ones I just mentioned. But if your footage is a bit less, or if your data limits are sufficient to be able to store your type of footage, that is a great and a very safe option. Just make sure you don't lose your account details or you lose your footage as well. All right, so we should probably touch on SD cards as well a little bit here, because that is very, very important to be storing your footage while you're capturing out in the field to a reliable SD or XF card. So I'm using the SanDisk cards for my cameras. I find they are quite reliable. This one here is one of the extreme SanDisk cards, because I know it's going to get the job done nice and fast, capture that 4K footage in a 100 megabit bit rate, and also transfer relatively quickly to my computer as well. This one is a 180 megabyte per second read speed, which is definitely one of the fast ones on the market, but not as fast as you can go. But it's one of those things that if you're out filming a video and you've got a lot riding on that video project, having a good quality and reliable SD card is very important. And I definitely recommend investing in one that's going to stand the test of time and perform reliably for you. All right, so I have to fix this below the camera. Also, don't forget to comment again on leaving a comment in that comment section down below if you want to go into the draw to win one of our free 5 Wondershare licenses. Sorry, my tripod is just falling apart, but I think that's pretty much got it fixed. And we're moving into the last later phase of the video, which is touching on Wondershare Recoverit, Wondershare Repairit, which is software hopefully you're all familiar with. And you might have seen me doing a couple of videos on this channel explaining what it's all about. Definitely a pretty revolutionary bit of software that's pretty fantastic if you have a corrupted video file, or maybe you've got a deleted video file that you're wanting to recover. You've accidentally deleted it, or you've done what I'm always scared of doing and dropped one of my hard drives off the desk, and now the video files on here are corrupt. And that's a bit of a nightmare situation, especially if you've gone into like a lot of lengths to try and capture the footage you need for a project. If I'm out and I've driven for 4 hours to go and film some valuable content I need to put together for a client, and I come back and I find one of those files is corrupted, that's quite a disaster. So as you guys might know, I've been producing videos on this Wondershare channel for a couple of years now and learning software and sharing it with you guys along the way as well. So hopefully you guys have found those videos helpful throughout the years. Make sure you leave a comment here as well if you are wanting to win one of those free licenses to Wondershare Recoverit and Wondershare Repairit, and also make sure you follow those social media channels as well. They're all linked in the description down below. Now, what happens if you do have a corrupted video file? Well, I'll show you exactly what you can do. I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see this screen, but I'll just swing it over in place here. Now, traditionally speaking, if you have a corrupted video file, it would be pretty much game over, right? So if you click on your video file and it won't load, you're like, oh, what do I do? Which means going out and reshooting that exact same piece of footage, and you'll never get the same thing twice, right? It's impossible to film the exact same piece of content twice. And if that's for a client's video or just for your own project you've been working really hard on, that can be quite a devastating situation. And it can happen so easily. If you knock a hard drive off the desk, like I said, if you experience a power outage, for example, and you're halfway through manipulating or transferring a file, that can quite often lead to some corrupted data. And that's where a software like Wondershare Repairit comes in amazingly handy, just to be able to click in a few or press a few buttons and have that video file restored to its former glory, and you'll be able to edit it again, no problems at all. So we'll run through how to do this really quickly. I've got a corrupted video file saved on my desktop. So I'll put that one aside because that's going to be a good example of how the software works. I've loaded the software up here, and just to give you guys a run through of the version we are using. So you can compare it to yours for use case. I'm using Wondershare Repairit version 5.0.5. That is the latest version as of today, and definitely a great option if you've got some corrupt files that need restoring. So on the left-hand side here, you'll find a few different options for the ways you can repair your files. Obviously, by default, it loads on the video repair tab, which is probably going to be your most common use case. But if you have other formats of corrupted files, rest assured there's still going to be a solution for you. So there's more repair types here. You can just click on that tab there. Now we've got photo repair, file repair, and also audio repair. So a lot of options for a lot of different file types. If you've got a corrupted spreadsheet, you can go into the file repair. If your MP3 track or your audio track, and that's what I should have mentioned with these microphones that we're talking about earlier, the Rode Wireless Go, they can actually store the recorded audio on the actual microphone itself. So if you need to get that audio, you can plug it into your computer, pull that audio track off, and use it like then. But there is a chance for it to get corrupted if I drop this, or if while I was transferring the audio from this microphone to my computer, I'd experienced a power failure, or maybe I'd unplugged the microphone when it was halfway through that transfer, and all of a sudden I've got a corrupted audio file. That's what we would load in here, jump into the audio repair section, drag the audio file in, and repair it as quick and easy as that. So a bit of a demonstration when it comes to video repair, because again, that's probably going to be your most common use case. Jump into the video repair tab here on the left-hand side. Hopefully you can see that. You probably can't unless, as we mentioned earlier, let's open that aperture right up, bring this screen across. Hopefully next time we do a live stream, we'll try and figure out a way we can actually share the screen onto the live broadcast, but hopefully this will work for now. And just download Wondershare Repairit for yourself to have a bit of a play around and experience it for yourself. Definitely a very useful bit of software that I'm sure you guys will get a lot of use out of. So from this main Repairit window, just going to click on the add button. There's my corrupted video ready to go on my desktop there. Hit on open. Now this can support a whole wide variety of different file formats. You see here MOV, MP4, M2TS, MKV, MTS, 3GP, AVI, FLV, M4V, INSV, KLV, the list goes on. If you've got a corrupted video format, chances are this bit of software will be able to repair it. So my video here is, if I just go to the detail view, we're repairing an MKV video file. Click on open. What that's now going to do is bring that corrupted video file into our software. It's going to be doing some processing. It's going to tell us a bit of information about that video if it's available in that metadata. Things like what camera it was captured on, your resolution, frame rate, bits and pieces like that. This video is a bit corrupted, so it's got a few of those bits of information missing, but if your video file is compatible, it will have that data presented to you there, together with the path that video file is located on. Now, easy as this, it's all loaded into the system. Click on that repair button. It's going to start performing its repair. Luckily, the computer is pretty quick, so you don't have to wait too long to see the outcome of this. There we go. We get a message saying one video has been repaired successfully. Please prepare that preview and save the video file now. So now we can see a list. If I'd uploaded more, there'd be quite a few cascading down the page. We just uploaded and repaired that one video file. So that's what we can see in our list here. So I click on that play button. That's going to fire up now. And just like that, the video file is fixed. That was like 4 button presses, and now my video file has been restored. So that's just a 16-second clip that I noticed was not working properly. So now that I've previewed and that definitely is working, that's when you jump down here and press save. Or if you get to this point and you're like, okay, now it's playing my video through, but there's still something that looks a little bit amiss, maybe the colors are wrong or the audio's out of sync, you can jump into the advanced repair section, and you can upload a sample video file that you know was recorded using the exact same type of camera. And that's going to fill in some of the blanks for the software and let it actually work out how best to repair your particular video file. So if I filmed a video on my Sony a6400 using my 16mm lens, and I'd come back and I'm like, oh, that video file has become corrupted. What am I going to do? Jump in here. First thing I'll do is what we just did, try and run it through this standard repair process. And fingers crossed that should repair it. And 9 times out of 10, that will successfully repair your video file. But if you still find after going through that something looks slightly amiss, that's when I'd pull out some old footage from one of my various different hard drives of footage that I know was recorded on that same camera. I would bring that into the system here just by choosing the folder icon, and I'd find somewhere on the system that had that same video file. Then press next, and it will go through that repair process and have a better chance of correctly restoring your video file. And then once we're happy, we just come here, click on the save button, and we'd be done just like that. So definitely worth getting a bit of software like this. It might absolutely save your life one day if you've just been out in the field shooting some very important video files. The last thing you want is for those files to become corrupt. So I'm just going to push this screen away for now, and I'll dial this camera setting back into F2. And hopefully you can see when I'm doing these settings, this is what we were mentioning earlier about that aperture. So when we were focusing on the screen there and showing how Wondershare Repairit works and can definitely save your video files, the whole rest of the background became quite dark, whereas right now, back on shooting F2, everything is quite bright again. So that is a real good example of how the aperture can definitely vary the lighting in the room. Odera says, well, where has this software been? I know it's one of those things that not many people seem to know about software like this, and it's one of those things that's definitely worth having on your computer. Because imagine the frustration of getting back from a whole day long shoot and just that one file you really need has become corrupted. And this day and age, with the amount and the frequency we're moving software between SD cards, hard drives, computers from one hard drive to another, the chance of something to go wrong is it's quite high nowadays, and there's more things than ever before that can go wrong. Viruses can infect your computer, malware, things like that that get in and really corrupt your system. That's where software like Repairit can really come in and save the day. So as I mentioned earlier, we are giving away 5 free subscriptions. So make sure if you haven't already, drop a comment in the comments feed below this video, and then jump into the description of this video as well, and make sure you follow all the different social media pages that are listed in there, because that's where we'll be announcing the winners, the lucky winners of those free subscriptions. And nothing more you need to do other than drop a comment and follow those pages. So yeah, it's one of those things you'd be crazy not to do that, right? Anyway, so that pretty much draws this live stream to an end. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to drop them in that comment section there. We can get back to them nice and quickly now. Or if there's any questions you have about the software we're demonstrating before you right now, I'm more than happy to answer them as well. And also just a special thank you for for tuning into our first official live broadcast. Make sure you do let us know if you're watching this either live right now, or maybe you're watching this in future. This will remain published on the channel. Let us know what you've thought of this broadcast, if it's answered any questions you guys might have had about the real talk. I did answer your question before. I'm using the Camlink 4K to stream this broadcast into the computer. You can kind of see it plugged in just down there, and that's what's streaming the feed in through the computer. And then this microphone is also plugged in, but yeah, the video feed is run through the Elgato Camlink 4K. I've only been using it for probably about a week now, so I was just waiting on it to arrive before we could do this live broadcast. But yeah, I wasn't having very much luck with Sony's built-in Imaging Edge software. I was finding the picture was a little bit glitchy between the two, and also we couldn't stream full high quality, full 1080p footage to YouTube. So decided to go out and get this Elgato Camlink 4K. Very easy to set up, so definitely recommend if you're looking for something similar. They are a little bit pricey, but yeah, they've been working quite well for this broadcast, and you guys have been commenting saying the video footage is quite nice, so definitely would recommend something like that. But if you guys, have had any ideas for future live broadcasts, feel free to drop them in the comment section down below. I know we talked about quite a bit today, running through various different cameras, drones, microphones, everything from this fluffy Rode VideoMic Pro Plus to the wireless Rode Microphone Go. Once again, definitely recommend something like that if you're looking into getting into the whole video space. And then everything from the different lenses we've spoken about, gimbals, and everything to make your videos look a whole lot better. So as I mentioned, my name's Daniel Sands. I've been working on quite a few different videos on the Wondershare Recoverit and Wondershare Repairit YouTube channels over the years. You might have seen a a few videos of mine pop up along the way, and hopefully those videos have been helpful to you. Adara says, "This has been really helpful. Your videos on smart TV connections and others really helped me last year as an intern. Can't wait to gain more." That means a lot. I'm really glad to hear those videos have been helpful. That's why we aim to always provide videos for you guys that can either answer your questions or provide you with solutions to problems that you might be experiencing. So hopefully you guys got some value out of today's live broadcast. As I mentioned, drop a comment either now or when you're watching this video in future. If you have any follow-up questions, I'll be monitoring this comments feed. So if you want to know any more information about anything we've discussed, from the Sony cameras, Sony lenses, want to share Repairit, the software and all the different various features it has, lots of video repair, file repair, audio repair, all those features are all packed into this one bit of software. Jump onto the website, download it, and give it a test for yourself. And I'm sure it's going to save your footage one day. And it's one of those things that's definitely worth having installed on your computer. But beyond that, microphones, drones, if there's anything, or computer itself, software, video editing in general, or data backup and storage, if there's anything you guys would like to know about that, feel free to comment down below. I'll keep an eye on that comment section and get back to you guys as soon as I can. But in the meantime, thank you guys so much for watching this live broadcast. It means a lot that you guys have tuned in. If you've stayed tuned in the whole way along, that's very much appreciated. And with that, we'll catch you guys soon. The next video. That's been our very first ever live broadcast. We look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks, guys.